I'm Melissa Shanahan, and this is the Velocity Work Podcast, episode number 62. This podcast is for attorneys who are running their own firms. We explore tactics, tools, and stories related to pushing past simply lawyering well and into building a successful firm. Working in your firm and working on your business are two very different things. This podcast focuses on the latter. Hey, welcome back to the show this week. I am pumped that you're here. I'm really excited to bring you today's conversation with Talitha Kozlowski, who is one of the 3 co-founders of lawclerk.legal. She's one of my favorite humans. She's a ray of sunshine. And from the second that I met her, which was at Max Law Conference in 2019, and from the second I laid eyes on her and I heard her speak, I was like, oh, this woman is awesome. So I made a point to get to know her. And I'm so glad I did. She's wonderful. And I think you will, if you don't already know who she is, and if you're not familiar with her, after you listen to today, you will probably agree with me very much. One of the things that we talk about today that's so important is that you really have to decide that you're going to operate differently before you can have the kind of life where you delegate well. So we're always searching for, typically business owners are always searching for how to delegate better, it's almost like you focus hard on the delegation piece and how to do it right. And I think what comes out of the conversation today that I hope you glean from it is that you have to set yourself up well to do that. And if you set yourself up well, then you're not going to screw up delegating. You might learn some things along the way and kind of tweak how you delegate or how maybe you communicate some things. But you've got to, it first starts with having a bit of non-negotiables. I'm not going to spend time on the things that I can't spend time on. By the end of the year, I'm going to have all the things that I don't need my brain. I'm going to have them outsourced. And it feels overwhelming. And we talk about this sense of overwhelm on the podcast and how it keeps us stuck. This overwhelming feeling, we just keep putting it off because it's overwhelming, which creates more overwhelm. So we talk about all this. And what I just want to offer before you listen to the conversation is, from the get-go, I want you to listen to this from the perspective that it's not just about you delegating better. It is about you being willing to operate in a way that you should be operating as the business owner. How do you need to show up differently? How do you need to think about your time differently in order to have a firm and a life that you don't hate? Right? I think we all get sucked into work, and not that y'all hate your jobs. Most of you I talk to, you are spread thin and you are working more than you want to, but you don't hate your work. My point is, how can you do this thing with running a firm in your own life and not be sucked dry? That's possible. It's 100% possible. But you have to have goals. You have to have something you're working towards. And then you have to kind of work backwards to figure out how you need to spend your time in order to make those things happen. And once you know how you need to spend your time and you schedule time for those things, you'll quickly realize you only have so much time to give. And so what are you going to do with the other stuff that doesn't fit anymore? And this is how you start to make headway for yourself. So I want to encourage all of you who are listening to this to really just listen from a very open place so that you can start to think about for yourself, really what's D1? What's the first decision that you need to make in order to be someone who is in charge of their time, not at the effect of the world, but you are taking the reins into your hands as much as possible. And in order to do that, you really have to be open to what you need to shift. That's sort of the precursor to delegation. Because if you are a person who delegates well, that means you are a person who values their time so much that you will not spend it anymore doing the things that keep you in the spin of busyness. If you're the kind of person who's going to delegate and do it well and as a way of being and as a way of life, that means you have to be the kind of person that is thoughtful, is high level, and knows where your value is and knows what you need to spend your time doing. And then the pieces fall into line and it becomes really clear what you need to delegate. I think people tend to want to delegate to sort of push things off because they feel so chaotic. They don't even know, their head is spinning and they're just trying to survive and keep their head above water. And so they delegate in order to do that. And that is one tactic, and you could totally do that. But if you want to grow your firm and if you want a life that isn't just sucked out of you by the work, then you really need to think about how you view your time and your role as the owner. So I just want to plant that seed before you listen. Okay, well, I'm excited for you to hear everything she has to say. I do want to mention that the workshop that Talitha led, you'll hear about that in the podcast. She led a workshop for my mastery group members. And if you want to be a part of mastery group, you can learn more and join at velocitywork.com/join. So head on over there if it sounds interesting to you. Basically, you have a bunch of access to not only ongoing coaching and accountability, but you have access to the vault, which is where the previously recorded workshops live and coaching calls and et cetera, et cetera. Nothing's hidden. If you're a member of Mastery Group, nothing's hidden. And so this is one of the things, the workshop she led, this is one of the things that's available to you. And it was a good workshop. The worksheets that she created for it were so good. And the attorneys got a lot of value out of working through the worksheets and participating. So you will have access to that if you join. So you can go learn more at velocitywork.com/join. But you know what? If nothing else, you just listen to this podcast, soak up the goodness, and implement some things. Don't just consume the information. I really want you to hear it, really think about things, mull it over, decide what you need to do differently, and then take some steps, like take action from this podcast so that you can start to feel a sense of relief and control back over your time and your life. All right, everyone, enjoy. Welcome to the podcast, Talitha.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah. So everyone that's listening, you're in for a treat. Today we have Theresa Gray Kozlowski. I am a huge fan of Talitha's, and I wanted to have her on because I think there's room to have a meaningful conversation about delegation. And I know there's a lot of information about delegation out there, but I like to dig into things differently than what I find sometimes out in the world on certain topics. And this is one of them. I also have some experience with Talitha because I had her come in to lead a workshop for the members of Mastery Group, which is a membership that I run. And it was so helpful for them to think through things in the way that she had worksheets ready and she posed some questions, and it was just really helpful for them. And so I thought, well, let's have her on the podcast. Maybe she can be helpful to the listeners as well. So Talitha, just thanks for being here.
Oh, so excited. And you know how much I adore you. And I just really think what you're doing is something special. So thank you. It's a pleasure.
That means a lot. Thank you. Well, okay. For those who may not be familiar with you or with your company, which is called Law Clerk, can you give a little background about yourself and about what you do now? And what Law Clerk is.
Wonderful. So I hate to admit this, I've been practicing law for 16 years, which means I'm not 30 anymore. And I do corporate bankruptcy work. And I started at a mid-sized firm that grew to be 5 regional offices, lobbying arm, became partner at that firm. And in 2015, 9 partners and I left and started a boutique law firm in Las Vegas, which has just been such a gift. I say it all the time, but practice small law is the way to go. It's just so much better. It's such a better life. And just absolutely incredibly happy with the group. So still practicing. I do corporate bankruptcy work. And then also started Law Clerk, one of 3 co-founders. And so really Law Clerk grew out of our transition from this much, much bigger firm. So, we got to be our small shop and it was fantastic. And you didn't have conflicts and you had control over your work and just everything was so much better. But we missed a couple of things, right? We missed when you got that big case and you needed bodies just to keep it going, keep the machine running. And then sort of that expertise. So corporate bankruptcy, I would have gaming issues arise and employment issues and securities and stuff I can figure out, but I sure the heck don't want to, right? Like that's not how I want to spend my day. And so having sort of subject matter experts to go to. And so missing those two things, we started working together and built LawClerk, which is a marketplace that connects freelance attorneys with practicing attorneys that need work on a project basis and creating these virtual associate relationships. So whether you need once a month somebody to do a research memo for you, or you need somebody to work 20 hours a week to help you get written work done, we provide the freelance attorneys and the connection and the communication tools and facilitate the ability to get the work done, to do billing, to sort of manage that entire relationship. So wearing both hats right now.
Okay, cool. All right. Yeah. So, again, I love, and I told Talitha I was going to kind of set the stage for this conversation because, in the workshop, I had a participant, maybe more than one, that was a little worried that the workshop was going to be a sales pitch for LawClerk. And while I am a huge fan of LawClerk and what it can do for attorneys, like those of you listening, so I do want you to keep your minds and your ears open to what LawClerk could do for you and your firm. It's almost like it feels like a natural byproduct when you think through delegation. And as we talk to Talitha about delegation, and the reason I'm having her on is her head lives here constantly. That's what LawClerk is meant to do and to provide. And so she's got to be dialed in to delegation and how to maximize delegation and how to make sure you're delegating properly or in the ways where everybody can win. Like there's a lot to delegation. I mean, that's why it's such a heavily researched topic, is because I think people get stuck with it in so many different ways. And so I'm having her on because her head, this is the space she lives in. And she's very good at delegating at this point, and she's very good at helping, in my opinion, other attorneys think through so that they can delegate well. And I want that to be a takeaway from this. And then secondarily, if you think her company sounds interesting, I want you to go check it out for sure. But no, and we talked about this beforehand, this podcast isn't a sales pitch. It's a good conversation and things that attorneys need to be thinking through. And many of you listening to this will sort of come to the realization that it probably makes sense to have LawClerk as a piece of your solutions puzzle for yourself. So yeah. So with that, okay, I have some questions about you and delegation and how you think about things, or how you sort of got to where you are in terms of your brain and thinking about things. And then I have some specific questions about delegation as a process. So I would love to start with you. And I'm wondering, have you always been good at delegation? Like if you could look back on your journey as an attorney, is there a point where it was like, oh, I need to figure something out? This is crazy. And maybe it's when you left and started your own firm with the other partners. But like, I would love to just hear your experience, because I'm sure people listening will relate to whatever your experience may have been.
Oh, wow. No, there was absolutely this sort of moment or period of time of sort of an epiphany. I was working my way up to try and become partner at this firm, and was working just sort of incessantly, right? Like huge billable hours. And I was generating and starting to build a book of business, but was really was struggling with like, how do you market and like find the time, not like actually doing it. Like, how do you find the time to go to market, and how do you get all the work done? And then how do you bring on more clients? Because what I was doing, and that so many attorneys I think do, is we sort of do everything ourselves at the beginning. And we sort of start to think we're the only ones that can do it, and we're the only ones that can sort of manage the client. But the reality is there's only so many hours in the day, right? There are 24 hours and you're capped at some point. And for me, what I started doing was giving up things that were really important in my life, right? I started giving up time with my husband, and it was, it was starting to damage our relationship. And I was giving up time with friends, and I was giving up sort of those, I was giving up exercise, and, it was sort of impacting my health. So I sort of had those things all happening. And I started looking around my firm, because everybody kept saying, "Hey, you're on the way to making partner, but you need to generate more. You need to originate more." And I had no more hours left. I was done, like tapped out on hours.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause there's, like I said, 24 hours in a day. And started looking at sort of my partners that were really successful. And what I realized is they didn't spend all their time drafting, and they didn't spend all their time sort of handling the small things. What each of them did was focus on what really grew their practice. And then they found other people to do everything else. And it was sort of this moment of, I either can continue in this path of trying to do everything I can. I've run out of hours. I'm probably not going to grow my business, past where the size it is now, and not particularly happy right now. Or I can make really systemic changes. And that systemic change, like just huge, was learning to delegate unequivocally, like learning to delegate. Is what changed everything, because, it, as I looked at sort of the successful attorneys, they weren't doing the time consuming. They weren't writing their own briefs, right? They weren't doing discovery. They weren't handling sort of small court appearances. Like, they were having other people do all of that. They were originating their clients, right? They were handling the strategy of the case. They were handling sort of the big picture things that only they could do, and delegating the rest. And through sort of that exploration, I absolutely started putting in place steps to begin delegating. And it starts small. And starting to make positive changes as far as having other folks, do things, and letting go, and appreciating that I needed to let go of things and let other people help me out, and let other people do work. And it was sort of baffling that I spent 7 years not appreciating that without delegating, I was stagnant, right? There's only so much to do. And it really did change my practice significantly. My book of business more than doubled within like 2 years. I was much happier. I had much more time to sort of live my life. And it really, delegation was the key to being much more successful and much happier, for sure.
Okay. Couple questions. So you're talking about still at the big firm that you were.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Back. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So my next question is, did the people who you observed were delegating, like, as that was how they ran themselves, then did you have access to the same resources they had access to? They were just utilizing them in a smarter way, or did you have to kind of, I know this doesn't necessarily apply to small firm owners right now, but I'm super curious. Did you have to get creative with how to provide that resource for yourself, or was it there all along? You just weren't doing it. You weren't using it the way you should have been.
I think it's both. I think that there were certainly resources I was not taking advantage of. I think something we often do too is, particularly as attorneys, is we think only we can do X, Y, and Z, right? And so, like I had a fantastic legal assistant that wicked smart, and there were all kinds of things that once I was like, okay, you're handling this, she did it beautifully. But it was just a matter of me letting go and going, yeah, you can manage that. Or, you can handle my calendar, or you can do these intake calls, and sort of appreciating that you don't need to be a lawyer. And I didn't need to handle sort of a bunch of different tasks. And then part of the other part of it was certainly asserting myself to be confident in delegating work to younger associates. And that's just, I think that's part of bigger firm structure. But so I think it was twofold in that respect.
Okay. Okay. That's good to know. Also, I love what you said about use the word systemic. Like you had to, I can't remember if you said it was systemic change or, I don't know, say a little bit more about that. Cause I wanted to expand on it a little bit.
So I think, delegation, you have to be thoughtful to delegate, right? It's hard. Delegation is hard. I think you said that at the beginning. It's hard. You can't delegate if you're not thoughtful about what you need to accomplish, if you don't acknowledge how long things take, if you're not thoughtful about what skills you need in people to help you, if you're not thoughtful about really where you want to be and what you need to do to get there, right? Like, I think it's easy to come up with these lofty goals, but to sort of think through, what do I need to do? If I want to double my clientele, you're probably going to have to go spend some time marketing, right? And being thoughtful about what that takes. So it was, it was putting in place things like, I'm going to do, I don't remember what it was, but like, I started sending out personalized Starbucks cards, which you can still do. And I still think is super awesome, that have your little logo on them and a little note from you. But, to sit down and handwrite those and send those out, and to make sure that I went to, 4 lunches a week and 3 dinners and was making connections. And those are huge time commitments, but being thoughtful about, what do I need to do in my practice to grow it? How much time do I need to do that? And more importantly, what do I need to give to somebody else so that I have that time to do it? So it was systemic in that you really have to be thoughtful, and you have to put in place your plans and your systems to delegate, really.
Gosh, I love this, because this is, I'm constantly, it's almost like I'm a broken record, but y'all are still listening to the podcast, so apparently it's okay. But I'm a broken record about how important it is that you have to change how you operate in order to get a different result for your firm and your own life, which is kind of what you're saying here too. And when it's such a systemic shift, because, like, for instance, what you just said about, you have to know where you're going. You have to have a plan and be very thoughtful. That is part of having goals and figuring out what projects and what meaningful priorities are going to take you to those goals, need to be accomplished so that you can hit your goals. And like what you're just saying, the thank you notes, for example, like, that is something that a busy person, they shove out. Like, that doesn't win when you're like, quote unquote, busy. And people kind of wear busy like a badge of honor. And they tend to think that because they're busy, they're productive, but it's not true. Like, real productivity is spending your time on meaningful things. And in order to line yourself up with that, you have to be clear about what you're trying to create. What are you trying to accomplish with the work hours that you have, really, like, long-term, or, even like a few months out. So it's so interesting to hear you say it really is a systemic shift, because it's sort of, if you want to get better at delegating, it force functions all of these other things that have to get into place. Because if you don't change how you're operating, which is kind of what you're saying, you had to go from being in the rat race to, okay, wait, I need to shift something. And if I want to be able to delegate more so that I can spend time on the things that only I can do, I got to get my stuff in line. Like, I have to get my ducks in a row and be organized and thoughtful about it all. And that's I just think it's an important point, because I think that people are always looking for, I think that's why it's such a heavily searched topic about delegating, because people want the quick answer. They want, like, just a 5-step process for delegating well. And you could do that, but if you aren't in line with your goals and priorities, you're still kind of spinning. So I don't know if you have thoughts about that, but it just is, I really like how you're explaining it.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. It is, without sort of the, I think of it sort of as you have this big, you have your big goal, right? Whatever that is, for me at that point in time, it was doubling my book of business, right? That's what I was going to do. And you have to have milestones, right? Because if you're looking at that, first of all, that just seems lofty, right? And as you're buried day to day and you're getting the phone calls and you're getting inundated and you have court and you're just overwhelmed, if you don't have sort of okay, by November, I'm going to have accomplished this. And by, October, and sort of your monthly bite size so that it's consumable, I think it's almost, it's overwhelming to look at that. And even at your monthly, you really need to sort of break down, what are you doing every day? What should you be doing every day? And what can you get? What is not furthering your path to your goal? Because if it's not the stuff, if you're not spending your time on what's getting you there, you're not being productive. You're not going to reach your goals. And so I think you're 100% right in that you have to be thoughtful about sort of the big picture, the milestones, and then the daily and sort of, what you're doing and how you're getting there and what you're accomplishing to take a step forward every day, in those paths.
Do you think, I remember in the workshop that you led, I remember you saying,
smart.
Yeah, I will. I remember you talking about how for instance, one of the things that the mastery group members have to do, or, whatever they're accountable for, is doing what we call a Monday map and a Friday wrap, which is basically bookending your week in a really meaningful way so that you can make sure that your week is planned in a very realistic and in a way that's going to produce results. And so you've been doing that for a long time. We were talking about this, I think in the workshop, we talked about this. You've been doing that for a while. Do you think it was around the same time? Like you kind of had to start doing that in order to be good at delegating? Is that when you were thoughtful about how you spend your time in the week, or not necessarily, that didn't line up?
No, I do think sort of the process that I still do today is, was developed then. And I literally sit down every Sunday and go through what I am going to accomplish on the legal side, what I'm going to accomplish on the law clerk side. And for me, it's very helpful to say, this is a Monday, this is a Tuesday, and sort of what I'm going to accomplish on each of those days. And, does it happen every time? No, but, you get to Saturday and, 90% subject, unless there's been some crazy emergency, but 90% of what you said you were going to accomplish has been accomplished. And, usually in a reasonable time frame, right? Like not pulling crazy all-nighters, not doing the things I used to do. I remember I worked 60 hours straight one time. Like that's crazy. Right? Without sleeping. This is like sort of it's crazy. Like pre-planning life. But pre-delegating, pre getting control of my existence, right? But so sitting down on Sunday and really saying, this is what's going to get done Monday, this is what's going to get done Tuesday, because as you know, and as you preach, and as I think is just so fantastic, is in doing that, you can set reasonable goals, right? Because when you actually write it down, you're like, yeah, those are the 4 things I can actually get done on Monday. Like, I'm not going to get the 20 things running around in my head done on Monday. It's not going to happen ever. Right.
Right.
But when you put those 4 down, like you can get those 4 done.
Yeah. And which is fascinating, because still a lot of people, they put them in their calendar, but they double book themselves for, it's almost like, I have a client that calls it magical thinking. It's like, it's never going to happen, but you just shove it all on your calendar anyway, right. Close your eyes and just like scram through the week and then see what happens at the end.
Right.
Like, that's such a bad plan, but that's how a lot of us have lived for so long. And so that's, okay. So that's, I guess, what I just wanted to really touch on is some of us, and I've gotten myself out of it now. You have as well. It is a systemic shift to not operate that way, to not have to really plan a realistic plan. And, the argument is, well, I can't, if I like put it on the calendar where I'm making it, and they'll have air quotes, realistic, but it's not like, but then there's a bunch of stuff that needs to get done that's not getting done. I'm like, okay, but this is all the time you've got. Yes. So you either, it's like, okay, so then the leftover stuff, you've got to either, it's not important enough, and so it doesn't really need to be there, or you have to delegate it, which is such a good thing to get clear on. So, okay. So then I guess moving into the delegation questions, I think you did a really good job when you led the workshop of helping them sort of diagram by diagram, breaking down like how to get a project, or even like a bigger task, how to get a project broken down in a way that makes it so you can pass it off and the other person can knock it out of the park. So I don't know if that feels too vague, but I'd love to hear if you have any advice for like how to think about breaking the project down, or like someone may think like, okay, if I'm being really honest, I don't have to do example X, but it feels big and I don't know how to set someone else to do it in a way that I would like. So that like for someone that's in that boat, what do you recommend? Like, where do they start so that they can break this down to where they can hand it off? And maybe you're a perfect person to maybe put project X in there, like writing something or.
Yeah. I mean, so things like, for the litigators out there, things like summary judgment briefs are sometimes overwhelming, right? Because you have to take sort of, usually this universe of information, like all of these depositions and all of this discovery you've compiled, and try to put together this succinct motion. And most places that involves a motion, a separate statement of facts, your declarations, maybe a proposed order. And it's just really, for me, it's, it feels like a daunting task because there's just so many components. It's such a heavy lift. And so, I think sometimes stepping back and thinking, for instance, would it be useful to have somebody go through all of those deposition transcripts and look for issue X and sort of, go through it or summarize your deposition so that you have quick depo summaries that you can use. That's a a significant piece of that. If somebody else did, and you either had a list of here's the issue and everywhere that came up in these transcripts that you can then look at when you go back to your summary judgment motion, that takes a huge piece of that off your plate. The obviously, so with Law Clerk, you have the ability to have somebody else do the first draft of your motion for summary judgment or your opposition to motion for summary judgment. And in that circumstance, when you're thinking about it, you're like, well, I'll have to get somebody else up to speed. But if you have to spend, if you, in this instance, you would like post a description of what you need. I need a motion for summary judgment. What the specific issues are you need a summary judgment motion on. You post that, you upload the transcripts, you sort of upload the critical pleadings. You jump on a call and talk to somebody for 20 minutes about sort of the case, what they need to know so that they can go dig into it. So maybe you have 45 minutes invested, right, in the summary judgment motion. If it's something complex with a big record, they then give you an initial draft back. That initial draft, it's not going to be 100%. It's not going to be exactly how you would have drafted it, but it's going to be 85% there, right? And so you can then spend 2 hours or an hour or 45 minutes cleaning it up, making it, filling in any little gaps or adding your own color. I like a very flamboyant introductory paragraph. So I always rewrite my paragraphs to fit sort of my style there. But if I spend an hour cleaning it up, I've now spent an hour and 40 minutes on a motion for summary judgment that is ready to file instead of what would have taken me 2 days, realistically to go through. So it's sort of, I think sometimes we're just like spinning because we're so stressed out about the idea of like, I can't, by the time I dive into this, it's going to take me 2 days and I can't set aside 2 days for that. But you don't have to, right? Like you can identify what needs to be done, give it to somebody else to get it 85% there, take the little bit of time to get them up to speed, put your finishing touches on it, and it can be done. And so now, again, you've spent less than 2 hours on a motion for summary judgment. Somebody else has done the work that you can then bill out to your client at a reasonable market rate, and you've saved yourself, the other 14 hours that you could be doing what you should be doing, right? Whatever it is you should be doing to get to that goal, whether it's marketing, whether it's, client strategy, whatever it is that you should be doing to get to that goal, you now have 14 hours back. And so, I think that, and I struggled with this too, this idea that, well, they're not going to do it exactly the way I do it. That may be true, but if they do it 95% or 90% of the way you would do it, and you only have to spend 1 hour on it, that is still better. That is way better than you doing it all yourself. Right.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Totally. I mean, it's like by not like, even if it feels new and foreign and uncomfortable, by not delegating, you just stay a slave to your own work. You can't get ahead at all. Yeah. I love too, when you talk about getting it 85% of the way, that was some advice given to me a while back that I think about now. And as we're growing, I'm having to learn how to delegate more and more. And I do think about, you said 85, but in my head, it's always been, can they get it to 80%? Can they just get it there? I know myself well enough to know, like, I don't want my hands out of it entirely. Like I want, I care, especially when it comes to writing or presentations, like it needs to be my voice and it needs to be, but I don't have to create it from scratch. I mean, there's only, So I really appreciate I think that could be useful for people that are trying to be better about delegating or make this sort of systemic shift in terms of how they need to think about their time and how they show up for their time. Is like, could you just get someone, like, could you wrap your head around having someone get it to 85%? Like, I think of it like volleyball a lot, the bumps that spike. Like I spike. That is my job, is to spike. But it's great to have someone set it up for you to be able to do that without, the word that I was going to say was just being a slog, like, getting through from the very beginning. So I think that's a really good way to put it, how you just said about like, get it to 85%. Because I do think people have all or nothing mentalities. And so when they think about delegating, if it can't be done perfectly, then they don't see a reason or a way to delegate. But I think just deleting perfection from the goal with delegation and just making it huge progress, and then you can quote unquote perfect it. Yeah.
Nope. I think that's absolutely it. I think, so we're bad at that as lawyers, right? Like, because particularly bad. I think we might be the worst in of the professions as far as that, like, idea that only we can do it. But it is really like, that mindset is so debilitating and really holds so many people back. Because you're right. Like, you as the attorney, you are the one spiking it, and that is what you should be doing, right? You should be doing that last, whatever that last little bit is. So I love that analogy. That's awesome.
Yeah. So there was a quote that you mentioned in the workshop that I wrote down. Deciding what not to do is as important as deciding what to do. And so it kind of goes along with some of the things we're talking about and how you plan your time and what you're going to spend your time on. But I'd love to hear you say more about that. So,
like, highest and best use is something I talk about a lot and think about a lot, because, as lawyers, my clients don't hire me to draft the pleadings. Like, they want a good work product, but they don't care who did it. They certainly don't care who sorted through the discovery. They don't care about any of that. So what is the highest and best use of my time? And that's different for everybody. But, for me, the highest and best use of my time is handling my clients, right? Managing my client relationships. I do corporate bankruptcy. There's a lot of complexity there. There's also, a lot of family-owned businesses and some emotional components there. Going to court, handling trials, handling those kind of things are probably the most important parts. And then obviously the marketing piece, which is always critical for anybody who's trying to grow their business. Those are the things that are the highest and best use of my time, which means that I probably shouldn't be doing anything else. Anything else is detracting from what I should be doing, what I should be spending on my time on. I think I talked about this during the workshop, but I'm a pretty good writer. Like I think that's definitely one of my strengths, right? Is putting together a very persuasive pleading. That is not the things I just mentioned, right? That is not what, at the end of the day, it advances my career, increases my the number of clients I have. And so, when we're thinking about what you should not be doing, if it is not the highest and best use of your time, you shouldn't be doing it. And the fact that I'm a good writer is irrelevant. And I had to stop doing that because that wasn't advancing my career. And so, I think it's important. It's really important to look at that end goal, to look at what you need to do to get that end goal, and to really focus on those highest and best uses. And whether you like it or not, the rest has got to go to somebody else to do, because that's the key to success. I really believe that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So and so deciding what not to do, it's almost like with what you just, by identifying what is the highest and best use of your time, it sort of automatically weeds out that these are the things I don't do, or that's the goals to work towards that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I loved that quote. It's sort of the inverse of what people tend to focus on. Like they usually decide what to do, but it's not hyper clarifying, where this is like, it's just a good way to think about it. Deciding what not to do is just as important.
And it's often the hardest part, right? Because, once you identify what you should be doing, and then you identify what you should not be doing, they're sort of bright lines usually. And as soon as you sort of make those decisions, then, it's incumbent upon you to do the delegation, to stop doing those things. But, I love that quote, because it's important to think about it's the yes and the no, and you're in one box. I do it or I don't do it,
Yeah.
And those boxes shouldn't be blurring generally. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Do you know what, an accountability chart is? Does that sound familiar at all?
I don't think so.
It looks like an org chart, but it's better because it sort of outlines responsibilities and stuff. It makes one of the things that
yes. Okay. Yes. Yeah. I know exactly what you're referring to. Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So one of the things, every time I work with someone on, which I really only have done previously with private clients, where we get in a room and one of the things we do is to map out their accountability chart. And inevitably what happens is, because the whole thing is not about people, it's about the business. Like, how is the business set up to function? And then when you list all the functions and responsibilities under each department or bucket or whatever you want to call it, that is so clarifying. It's almost like you could see in a complete picture all of the things that happen inside of the business and kind of what they fall under in terms of departments or sections of the business. And every time a client gets one of those, it's so much easier for them to delegate, because all this stuff lives in their head. And so all of a sudden, all these responsibilities are out in front of them, and it takes them all to build it, like a couple hours, but then it's done, and it's going to evolve and change as they grow. But it's like, it becomes so easy to see, for each responsibility, there's usually a process for that responsibility. And so if it's not dialed in, like, tighten that up, and then they can delegate it. But they have to think through it enough in order to delegate it. So I was curious if you've ever seen one, or, used one because it makes delegation so much easier and faster when you have one. So it just made me think of it when you're talking about what not to do. It's hard because it all lives in your head until it doesn't. And sometimes just seeing everything out in front of you can be helpful to mark those lines. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Oh, I love that.
Okay. The other thing I was going to mention, I thought was so cool that you led people through. I'm looking at the worksheets you provided. You gave a sheet on how to calculate the billable rate, the project cost, and the profit. Like, so if they were to delegate it, and specifically, maybe this is just if they, like this is just, doesn't have to be for law clerk, but this is really helpful to think of how to price your projects.
Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. So we did this for, we set this sheet up for law clerk, but even if you're not using law clerk, even if you're delegating, to other, to your paralegals or your, associates, or you're utilizing a contract attorney, or you're using some other, like, I think it's really, people, I think, get afraid they're going to lose money when they start delegating, right? Which, leveraging the time of,
sorry, I want you to speak on that. But the other thing that I have heard repeatedly is that they are afraid, they don't know the rate that's acceptable. And so they're afraid to lowball in an insulting way the people who would maybe be doing this work. So if you could speak to both of those that would be great.
Yeah. So, with the, so when you're sort of thinking about it as a cost, you really generally should be thinking about it as a profit center, right? Because most work can be billed out at whatever the sort of reasonable market rate is. And so simply because you're not doing it doesn't mean that you're not making a profit. We've been leveraging in the legal practice, we've been leveraging the time of other attorneys for, more than 100 years. Like, that is how you grow profits. It's the only way to grow profits because, again, you only have so many hours in the day, and that means you're capped at how much money you can make. But if you now have an extra 20 hours because you now have a paralegal or you now have a freelance attorney working for you 20 hours a week and you're billing them at their rate, you're making whatever that profit margin is on those people. So when you're thinking about delegation, you should be thinking about, this is how I make more money. This is how I grow my practice. This is not a cost. This is not you losing anything. With respect to, billing out, posting projects and how to value them. I think, there's different ways to do it. I think that if you have a general sense of, what the total number of hours are going to be. So, that it's probably going to be about 10 hours to do an opposition to a motion for summary judgment or an opposition to a motion to dismiss. And you are going to work with a 8th-year freelance attorney, and you're going to bill them out to your client at $225 an hour or whatever, reasonable market rate is sort of the magic language, and it depends on what jurisdiction you're in and your area of practice. But let's say it's 10 hours at $225 an hour. That gives you your billable value. That's what you're going to charge the client. We recommend that you then pay the freelance attorney about 40% of that, and that's how you would price your project. So if you're able, if you can kind of think about it that way. I had just a super interesting conversation with one of our freelance attorneys on Friday, who had practiced for a long time and decided he no longer wanted to have his own shop. And so he freelances so that he has ultimate flexibility now. Older gentleman, but super knowledgeable. And he said, Talitha, I'm happy netting $70, $80 an hour because I made, I realized that after paying my paralegal and after paying all my overhead and paying everything, I netted about $110 when I was in private practice. Like that at the end of the day is what I took home after paying for all of my expenses, my malpractice insurance, my everything. Said now, $70 an hour without any of the headache of having to run my own business It's like, this is
Yeah.
fantastic. This is wonderful. So, I think sometimes attorneys think about what they bill out on as their hourly rate and are afraid that they're insulting the freelance attorney. But remember, your freelance attorneys, by and large, don't have the overhead, right? They're not paying for a legal assistant. They're not paying for office space. They're not paying electricity. They're not paying all of these other things that we pay, which is why as attorneys, we have higher billable rates. And so, I guess I would encourage people to keep that in mind. I think Jess Birkin one time said, like, what's your best piece of advice? And she said, just do it. Just try it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just do it, because, we can always come up with excuses and reasons. And, I'm afraid, if you price it too low and you don't get the applicants you want, you can increase the price, right? You can always increase the price. So I think there's a little bit of element of like, just get out of your own way and do it.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Also, there's a book I read that talks about there's 3 kinds of business: my business, your business, and God's business. And so like God's business, that's what she was coining as like floods, war, when you're going to die, that kind of stuff. And then there's my business, which is me and my thoughts and my, like, what I have control over. And then there's your business, which is you and your thoughts and what you have control over. And if you think about, like, it's almost like that seems silly. It doesn't really hold up in an argument that that's the barrier, is that you're afraid to insult. Like they can say no, I'm assuming, to a project. Like, they don't have to do it if it's not a fair rate to them. So like, let them decide for themselves. I think it is I love that you just said like about 40% is a really good, that's a good way to think about your project. But I think people get in their head about like, well, I don't know that I would work for $70. Yeah, but you have your own firm, and that wouldn't cut it in your own firm. This is great for them. And it's, like, let them make their own decision. Post your job, and whoever wants the job will like go for it and stop worrying about them. They can take care of themselves. That's kind of what happens in my head about all of that.
Nope. I think that is beautiful. I may borrow that if you'll let me have that. That description.
Totally. It's like, stay out of their business. It feels like when you kind of look at it, you realize that as someone who is worried about that, I am just all up in someone else's business. Like, get back to your own, get your job done. Like, just put it out there and go. Yeah.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, the way ours works too is you post your project and they apply to you. So if they don't want to do it, they don't apply to you. Right. Like, so it's not like you're like cramming this down on somebody. You post it and they say, yes, I want to do that. So,
I also wonder if people think that, like Upwork, for example, which isn't law specific, but people use it for things here and there. And I hear a lot from people that like Upwork just takes too much. It's not fair to the people. I'm like, but they're still on it. Like, I get it. I get why, but it just feels like a waste of time to either use them or don't. But like, don't like spin about how much of a fee Upwork takes, which I think one of the participants in the program asked you about yours, and it was super reasonable, like super fair. You are a business. There has to be a piece so that the business can continue to grow and make improvements and be better for attorneys. But it was awesome. Like, you guys treat your attorneys well. You treat them right in terms of all of that. I don't know if you have anything you want to say about that, but I wonder if there's a
No, I do. So what our percentage is 28%. But what we provide is, a secure encrypted communication portal. We provide document library for exchanging it. We provide the mechanism for providing time cards. We handle all the tax reporting. We provide a video chat, sort of all of the communication tools that are in there. And, every now and again, we'll get a call from a freelance attorney and it's like, oh, I went around you guys and I got screwed. I didn't get paid. And I'm always like, oh, I'm really sorry about that. But, it provides certainty for everybody involved, right?
Yeah.
Like, the attorneys have certainty because we are involved. We're managing it. We give, the attorneys that are posting work, you get your dedicated law clerk advisor who's there to like help you look at candidates and help you navigate the process. And, or if you're like, I don't know how to price this, they'll say, well, here's 5 that just got, posted in the last 2 weeks. Here's some suggested pricing. So you have a person to pick up the phone and say, help me with whatever. And on the freelance side, they similarly, so we sort of give them all of the tools that they need in order to do the work. So it's not, it's just easy, right? We have some of our freelancers have their own, they become lifetime, this is their career path. They're going to be freelance attorneys and they have their own businesses and they still work through us because it's so easy for them that they, they like the work they get through us. We've made it so easy. There's certainty of payment, which just makes me cringe, but that's an issue on the freelance side,
Yeah.
And we
definitely.
offer, and we offer a 100% guarantee on being satisfied for the work product. So, I'm a practicing lawyer. I have friends that are on the freelancing side of law clerk. And, it's important to me that, we're improving the profession. Like part of the reason we didn't allow freelance attorneys to bid on projects is we didn't want to race to the bottom. Like we really think that freelance attorneys should get paid a fair rate, and that we want to elevate the profession so that clients are getting better work product, and hopefully we're helping to improve the access to justice a little bit, because if you're an attorney and that you can get somebody to do a brief or an appellate, handle the sort of appellate drafting for $2,000, maybe you can quote a client $5,000 on an appeal and give everybody certainty and give somebody a right to an appeal when maybe they couldn't have otherwise found an attorney. So I appreciate your comments, because really continuing to improve and support the legal system is really important to all of us. The 3 founders are, practicing attorneys and still practicing in different areas. And
that's awesome. Cool. That's great. I just thinking like how lightweight, like the gentleman that you mentioned you spoke to last Friday, like how lightweight his work is. Like he does good work, but that's the beauty. That's why people do that kind of work. They don't have to think about, like, their head is not in the 20 places that an owner's head is in. And some people, they don't want that. And so then they can do something different. Some people do, like they wouldn't live without doing their own thing. And that's great too, but sort of provides opportunity for good work to happen on all fronts with a company like yours. That's really cool.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Okay. I guess I was going to maybe round out with I feel like we've covered some barriers that people have. Like one is they feel like they are the ones that need to do it. And so we've talked through that. Another is they don't feel like they have the time to be able to delegate well. And usually it's just because of a lack of clarity. It's lived in their head for so long. We kind of touched on that, but, or I don't know, do you think we have like that? Like, I don't have time to delegate things. Well, yeah, you did touch on that, because you were talking about, it doesn't have to take you a long time. Just get started, put together what you need in a short amount of time, put together what you need, and then hop on a call, make sure you bring them up to speed on the case, and then let them get it to 85%. Is that fair?
Yeah,
Am I missing a piece of that?
No, I think that's absolutely, that is absolutely true. Sometimes it's just so overwhelming, and just getting somebody started. And I will tell you, it's so stressful when it's just sitting out there, right? And that deadline's coming and it's just on your shoulder. And you're like, oh my gosh. And then I don't know if anybody else, but I used to always be like, well, I'll do it Saturday. Like, that's a terrible plan, right? It's just weighing on you. And getting it to somebody to get started, not only, are you advancing the ball, but that stress Like that's sitting on your shoulder because you've given it to somebody. It's in process. It moves from like that, oh my gosh, I have to get to it. When am I going to get to it? How am I going to get it done? To saying, okay, next Friday, I'm going to spend an hour or two finalizing. And like that, that's stress relief. Oh my gosh. Yeah. It's amazing. Yeah. Right?
So true.
It's huge. It's huge.
I think about too, I talk a lot with my clients about, like you're talking about a project seems so overwhelming. And so it just sits there and sits there and sits there. One thing I talk a lot to clients about is, overwhelm is a feeling state. It's not a fact. And so, and we create basically the project isn't overwhelming. Your thoughts about the project are overwhelming. Like it's all an internal game. Right. And so, and it's crazy to think that what's running through your head is literally the thing stopping you. It isn't the size of the project. That's not what it is. It's your perspective about it. And so I hope that this podcast is helpful to get people to maybe take responsibility for how like the stress and overwhelm that they feel. You could stop that by just like cut the drama in your head about it and just take a few minutes to get someone on it. It could be as simple as that. And I'm sure I can just hear people listening being like, well, they don't understand my project or they don't understand what I'm dealing with. No, it's actually all, if it's something that you don't have to be the one to do, it's just that it's unuseful to think of it as this gargantuan project that needs days of your attention. It's totally unuseful. A useful perspective would be like, I need to break a few things down so that I can and have a good conversation with someone so I can pass this off and just get the ball rolling. I mean, and learn through it. Maybe it isn't going to be done by next Friday, but maybe it will. And you're not going to know until you just get going. And to your point, just do it. That's just like, stop listening to the ridiculous thoughts that are running through your head about the stuff you have on your plate, because that's the only barrier. The project isn't the barrier. It's your head. So
that's so true. That's so true.
It's normal and human. So I know I get passionate about this stuff, but it sounds like I'm yelling at people, but it's normal and human, but it's our responsibility to sort of take that back. Don't just let that live out. Yeah.
No, it's
so good.
That's so true.
Okay. So if people, well, first of all, I will say for everyone that's listening, if you join Mastery Group, which I'll put in the show notes a way to do that. These are the things, like you have access to every previous workshop we've done that's been recorded. It's yours to take part in and to listen to. The worksheets are there, all of it. And Talitha did one in August. I guess it was August.
Yeah, it would have been August. Yeah.
Yeah. So hers is in there, which is really useful. Everybody that took part in it was like really participated and they got a lot out of it. It was an awesome workshop, which speaks volumes to you. You're a good presenter and you're a good teacher. So that's there for anybody who wants to join master groups. There's also what I wanted to mention is that if they do want to check out Law Clerk, how do they do that? Where should they go? And is it what's the experience like? Is it easy to get started once they're there?
It is. So it's lawclerk.legal. And to go on and register, I think it's like 4 steps. We do the one thing we have you take a selfie with your ID. I like hold it up to my face just because I can't not do that. But we have you like hold your ID next to your face and take a picture so that we can verify that our users are who they say they are, right? So, and we give their bar information. It's becoming a little bit more common. Airbnb, I think, picked up something a little bit similar. But the integrity of the site, making sure that it's only attorneys on the site, is so important to us. So we do have our users do that, but it less than 5 minutes to sign up. It is so fast. It's free to have an account. So it's not. There's no cost. There's no sign up. It's literally sort of your name, your where you're barred, a little bit of information about your practice area, your beautiful little selfie with your ID, and that's it. We confirm who you are, who you say you are. And what's I think super great is once you register, you get assigned with an advisor specifically to the user. They'll sort of walk you through the platform, how it works, and they're your go-to. So if you have any questions ever, you have your person to chat with, and all of our advisors are fantastic. So
cool.
Yeah, it's really, we try, attorney time is it's our most valuable commodity, right? Is our time. And so we've made the registration just, I think, as easy and as streamlined as possible. So,
good.
lawclerk.legal.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I'd love to give your listeners a code from specific for you, if that's okay.
Cool. Yeah.
Yes. So we'll do, does Velocity 250 work or?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay. We'll do, so Velocity 250. So when you post your first project, we'll give you a $250 rebate on that first project. So a great way to try it out. And
I mean, go get your feet wet, people. Because I think it's one of those things that if they sign on, they go through the registration process, and then if they actually, they have an advisor, it's almost just get your feet wet. And if you need the advisor, you have that person, and then see if it's a good fit. And if not, right, but you didn't really lose out on much by giving this a shot, because things are set up for attorneys here. So it's nice to just be able to have a service that's set up for attorneys instead of, there's a lot of other companies out there with freelance workers, but not like this, not that exists with attorneys ready to go. It's cool.
No, I love that. Thank you. We love all your support, and I do just chime in, give it a shot. Whether you have sort of that summary judgment that's overwhelming, or an opposition that's coming up, or we have a lot of users that do some of their marketing, like their websites and blogs and all of that side of stuff that you need to get to, but never get to. We have a bunch of users that have other freelance attorneys write their blogs on sort of interesting cases or new statutes or et cetera. So also cool. A good way to help with marketing as well. If you're trying to get either, your articles done, and certainly have seen CLE presentations and things like that. So another way to try it to get, those things that you need to be doing that you never have time to get to off your plate.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. Yeah. Cause I'm sure a lot of people, I think that's for a lot of people is the stuff that they don't get to, cause it's not required client work you got to do and show up for, but there's probably a lot of things on the back burner that like that for marketing purposes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Thank you so much. I could talk to you. I want to talk to you more, but I want to be reasonable with the time, but I thank you for being here and doing this. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm your biggest fan, so it's really special to be here. So thank you.
Hi guys, it's me again. Thank you so much for listening. If you like this podcast, you probably understand that growth requires results, not just staying active. If you want to learn how to build your days around getting results, I'll show you how in this zero fluff class that I teach. Go to velocitywork.com/results for registration information. I cannot wait to see you there. If you want to hang out with us on social, come on over to Instagram. Our handle is velocity.work. And on Facebook, it's facebook.com/meetvelocitywork. Cheers, my friends, to real growth and a great life. Show notes from this episode can be found at velocitywork.com/podcast.